We're taught to acquire things in this society. How do we get things? How do we acquire things? But today's guest always reminds us that we are never taught of what to do when we lose things, when things are lost. And while there are many articles and books that have been published on the subject of grief, very little is available on how to deal with it in the workplace. And we're hanging out with Lena Lassiter today here on the Charvette Mitchell Radio Show. We're going to get right into it right after this intro. Don't you move.
Whoa. Why y'all so happy?
You don't know? Charvette Mitchell is on the radio.
It's time to get motivated, excited, and influenced. Why? It's the Charvette Mitchell Radio Show, live from Richmond, Virginia. And now, here to motivate, excite, and influence you, Charvette Mitchell.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Charvette Mitchell Radio Show, broadcasting live from the capital city of Richmond, Virginia. But heard and seen all across the World Wide Web. Thank you so much for all of our live viewers that are checking us out on live streaming. Listen, we are on YouTube. Shout out to my sister, my blood sister, Kimberly, who is holding it down on YouTube. There you go. And then certainly all across Facebook. Hello, Dr. Jackie, for jumping on in and joining us. Listen, can't do it without my mom, Betty. Hey, Betty, thanks for popping in and joining us as well. And so thank you, Twitter. We appreciate you as well. And all of those that are checking us out in Blog Talk Radio and in any of our podcast stations. Listen, Apple iTunes, you all are the highest listeners. So thank you for hanging out with the Charvette Mitchell Radio Show. As we have a goal to motivate, excite, and influence. And I trust that we're going to be doing that for you today. Listen, this segment is brought to you by the 6th annual pop-up conference for women entrepreneurs that's taking place November. Yep, in November 4th, 5th, and 6th. November 4th is for our VIPs only. November 5th and 6th is for all of our registrants. And guess what? Our guest today is going to be one of the speakers that you'll get to hear. So I'm inviting you, a personal invitation. We will be live in person for the 6th annual pop-up conference. Jump over to heygirlhey.biz, not .com, not .org, heygirlhey.biz and register today. Thank you. And shout out to Swag Her Magazine. Some of you may be listening in from that outlet, any one of their outlets. Thank you for Swag Her Magazine, always supporting the Charvette Mitchell Radio Show. Yes. All right. And listen, we have all the way in from Wakanda as normal, Wendy Lee coming on in from Wakanda. We appreciate you. We appreciate you as well. Yes. And we are on Twitter. So if you're hanging out on Twitter, twitter.com/Charvette is where you can hang out there. All right. So let me tell you a little bit more about our guest and then bring her up to the mic for this conversation today. Lina Lassiter is a senior manager in corporate America with over 20 years of insurance industry experience. She holds a bachelor's degree in business management with a concentration in leadership and master's degrees in human services counseling with a cognate in PTSD, trauma, and grief. Lena has earned certifications in advanced grief recovery and crisis intervention. Lena is the founder of and president of Forever Healed, which is a 501c3 nonprofit whose vision is to continually help people recover from the impact of death, divorce, and other losses. And we're going to get into it today. Hang out with us. I promise you there is content that is beneficial to you working in corporate America or even as a small business owner. Without further ado, coming up to the mic now, live on the Charvette Mitchell Radio Show. Hey, Lena Lassiter, how you doing?
Charvette Mitchell, I'm well. How are you?
I am awesome. We are so glad to have you. We see the hearts and the love coming in already from our viewers. And so I know that when we mention grief, and again, this specific show is going to be talking about the hidden cost of grief in the workplace. But sometimes, grief, it's not per se one of the sexy topics, that they want to necessarily talk about, but it is so very, very needed. And so let's talk a little bit about losses, because I think that oftentimes we are only thinking maybe one way. Can you share from your perspective and expertise what is defined as a loss?
So, Charvette, a loss is anything that we assign value to. Right. So it can be a person, it could be a thing, it could be us, it could be our time. So what happens is when we talk about the term grief, and I always say grief is the most misunderstood growth process. And I think that it's a growth process because we learn something as we go through this process. So grief is the end of or change in a familiar pattern, right, or behavior.
Yeah.
So when we hear that definition, Charvette, we quickly realize that grief is not just attributed to somebody dying, right? So typically when we say the term grief, and the reason why it's so scary and it's so uncomfortable is because when we use the term grief, people immediately think of someone dying.
Yeah.
But when you think of the definition, the change of, or the end of a pattern that's familiar to us, or a behavior that's familiar to us, right? That can be a loss. So that means we can go through 100+ losses.
Yes. And with this pandemic, like literally all of us have had a change to a normal pattern. So would you agree that we are, as a world, my goodness, I was going to say United States, but as a world, experiencing collective grief?
We are, right? So if you think about it, I would drive to work the same way every day, get up at a certain time, maybe fix my hair, brush my teeth, right? Those are normal behaviors to us. And now some people are working remotely, Charvette. They're not driving into an office, right?
Right.
So that familiar pattern has changed. So people don't even realize that it's grief. It's a loss to us because those things are valuable to us. So something as simple as driving to work, people aren't doing that any longer. So it's a loss going into an office. And our peers, right? So we're grieving. We're grieving as a nation.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. And I think this topic is timely about the hidden cost of grief in the workplace, because there are, we're coming up on the time where companies are saying, okay, come back if they haven't said already, come back. And we know that a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, dualpreneurs. So they work full time and also run their businesses and nonprofits on the side. Some are not going back. Some companies have made a decision that, we're not bringing you back into a building. You're going to work from home. Then there's the thing with the vaccine. And so some, certain sets of people feel like their freedom is being taken, and all of that is coming up. And then we still have to do jobs and have families and raise kids.
Which is why, Charvette, this is so important. And I truly thank you for the platform to even have a conversation, around grief in the workplace. Because we have to feel comfortable talking about it. And we have to also feel comfortable not talking about it. And I'll dive into that a little bit later. I see your face like, where's she going?
Yes. But listen, and if Wendy Lee is here, it's going to be something comical. So she said, grief is sexy. I get to lay on the lucky man's shoulders. There you go. Always helping us lighten
Love you, Wendy.
And welcome to all those that are popping in and checking out the Charvette Mitchell radio show. We are here with our guest, Lena Lassiter, founder of Forever Healed, and can help you with any kind of grief, loss, recovery. That's all the stuff we're talking about tonight. And I realize and I recognize that there are going to be a lot of people in the replay, or a lot of people that are listening that may not comment because you might just, again, be feeling some type of way. So I know that this show has impact packed in it. So, and I love that you gave out some information. You said the total cost of employee grief taxes U.S. employers more than 75 to 100 billion annually.
billion, Charvette. And when those figures were adjusted in 2017, and I haven't gotten an update, imagine what it is in 2021. But in 2017, that total actually had gone up to 75 to 100 billion annually.
Wow.
Yeah. And the reason why it's called the hidden cost of grief in the workplace is because some numbers aren't even factored into that number. So for example, the Council of Alcoholism, they estimate that alcohol abuse contributes, Charvette, to in excess of $276 billion. It taxes employers yearly. Now, when they took surveys, right? So again, people are trying to cope. These are their coping behaviors. So I'm going to drink to try to mask my pain, right? So when they surveyed these individuals to see why they were drinking or why they were out of work, they were all related to the loss of a loved one, they had gone through a divorce, or a breakup.
Wow. So that ties to grief.
It ties to loss. It ties to grief and loss.
Yeah.
Right? So imagine if you factored in, people who are out because they are trying to cope, whether it's drinking or abusing or whatever it is, right? So those numbers don't even factor into the 100 billion.
Woo. Okay. So how do we even start this conversation? Where do we want to start? Do we want to start with the people that are grieving and having to work? And do we want to start with those that are in management position and how do they help them? Where do we want to start this conversation?
Do you mind if I just jump in real quick to talk about why this is so important to me?
Yes.
So I want to just share, and I want to say to everyone who's listening, watching the replay, this is not to knock my past employer. Okay, because they were not educated. And at that time, Charvette, I didn't even know what I was going through. I couldn't even articulate what was happening. But once I was educated and understood I was grieving, I realized that this is what we needed in corporate. So let's start there. And then we can just jump from that point. So in 2007, my uncle was murdered. September 3rd, 2007, Charvette. And my mother had me at the age of 15. So we were 6 months apart. So my grandmother and my mother were pregnant at the same time. So his name was Keith. So on September 3rd, 2007, Keith was stabbed to death. So when I got the phone call, I couldn't even, Charvette, comprehend what they were saying to me. Like I just couldn't believe that he was murdered. Now, at the same time, I had started a new role. So I hadn't been in this role maybe 9 months, right? So to go to my employer and say, hey, my uncle has been, I didn't want to even talk about him being murdered. My uncle passed away. And because he was an uncle, so he wasn't an immediate family member per the guidelines and the requirement of the business.
Right? Which is most companies are define it that way. Yeah.
Right. Because how many of us have so many aunts and so many uncles, right? And you're taking this bereavement time. However, he was my brother. To me, he was my brother. So one thing that employers have to recognize is that you can't put a value, Charvette, on an individual's feelings towards another based on the relationship on the family tree.
That's good.
So I want to start there. Because even that relationship on that family tree, that's all it is. It's just names listed on this tree. But every relationship is unique and individual. So our losses, the way we grieve is going to be unique and individual. And on that family tree, that it may say my mom, but my loss may be me and my mom don't really have a great relationship. It may be a loss of expectation. Right. So catering to me because it's my mom, but I had a closer relationship with my brother, who you are viewing as my uncle. But no one asked me about him. No one asked me about our relationship. There was no call. There were no flowers. There was no card. And the one thing that resonated with me was I was asked, when was I coming back to work?
So just all we want to know is when you will be back making the widgets.
Yes. Right. So I had also gone through other losses in 2007, like gone through a divorce and just other things that had happened, Charvette. And I really felt like I was going to lose my mind.
Mm-hmm.
There were times, for those of you who are listening, I didn't know how I made it to work sometimes. I could not concentrate. I couldn't focus. I started losing weight. I bet I did not realize that it was grief.
Yeah.
It was grief, right? So, and also different cultures will grieve differently.
Yeah, and in the workplace, you've got a combination of a lot of different cultures. Wow, listen, we're getting listener comments. Thank you so much, listeners and viewers.
Angela.
Thank you, Angela said, this is great. So true. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're talking about, if you just popped in and someone shared this with you, we're talking about the hidden cost of grief in the workplace, corporate America. And I want you, as you're here viewing and listening, I want you to have two hats on, corporate America, but then also if you are a small business owner, you will be having, if you don't already have employees, contractors. So this plays both sides. So I want you to have both hats on. So
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you had this personal experience that ignited like, okay, and something has to be adjusted.
Something has to change, Charvette, right? So, and again, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as colleagues, we have to understand, again, different cultures will grieve differently. Some, I don't want to put everybody in the box, because some cultures, grandma raising the kids. You have auntie and uncles in the household. Right. So they're not these distant relatives. And I think we're uncomfortable asking the questions because, as you said earlier, Charvette, we're not taught how to lose things. We're taught how to acquire things. Right. So we're not comfortable asking about the uncle who passed away. So I want to help you business owners and you leaders who are watching, ask them about the person. If the loss was, someone who passed away, and some of you might say, okay, Lena, how do I do that? So if Charvette came to me and said that someone passed away, right? And I can say, oh, Charvette, wow, sometimes an aunt or uncle is just like having a second set of parents, right? So what are you going to miss the most about your aunt?
Oh, that's a good way to. What are you going to miss the most? Not try to come up with a whole bunch of, just let them reflect on the good things. Oh, this is so good. I hope you all are taking notes. Let me just capture this comment from Roxanne. Thank you, Roxanne. She said, I can relate to your story. Not sure how I made it through the day back then. Thank you, Roxanne.
Thank
Absolutely.
You, Roxanne.
And Kim is saying great. Kimberly is saying great counsel over there on YouTube. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Kimberly.
And Dr. Jackie as well, who's in the same kind of field. That
Dr.
you all
Jackie
are.
And I served together on the coalition board. And we go way back on the mission field. And we actually trained some classes together. Dr. Jackie, much respect. Thank you for joining in.
Absolutely. So ask them. So that's great. Any other tips or, one or two other things?
Right. Well, what was she like? What was he like? So again, getting them to just talk about that individual. And now you as a leader, as a peer, as a colleague can kind of gauge that relationship, right? And you're just allowing them to talk. And how does that make someone feel? Oh, they care enough to ask me, what am I going to miss most about this individual?
Yeah.
So like some of your listeners are saying, so again, Charvette, some days just didn't know, how I made it to work. I couldn't remember simple things. And, subconsciously, right, I told you I was adding holes to my belt because I was just losing weight, not understanding like what was truly going on. But as a result of that employer and I decided to part ways. But I tell you, that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
Wow.
That was the best thing because I was able to take a step back, reflect, process my grief, and I was able to heal. So I'm grateful, Charvette, for that experience because it fueled the passion to educate leaders and organizations on the hidden cost of grief in the workplace, right? So while that experience was uncomfortable, it produced so many blessings in my life, to include understanding my purpose, understanding that hidden gifts that needed to be nurtured and matured and shared with others, like we're doing tonight.
Yes.
Suicide, right?
Yeah.
At some point seemed like a valuable option at the time. when I was grieving, and my employees just didn't seem compassionate, didn't show empathy, right? Just the lack of actions. And not understanding too, when you have an associate who may have lost someone due to homicide, they actually go through judicial grief. And y'all probably what?
Listen, drop the nuggets, drop the nuggets.
What is that? We have to go to court hearings. We have to write witness statements. We have to watch videos of what happened if they have video footage. We have to see photos of our loved ones in that state. We are contacted every year when that person is up for parole. So all these things can trigger, and I'm sharing this with you leaders, because you may have someone on your team who has lost someone as a result of homicide, and we have to be aware of these things, right? So when they go to court, it's going to trigger. And then sometimes they get upset because if they feel like the person didn't get enough time, it's going to trigger. So that judicial grief triggering, Charvette.
Wow. And let me capture another comment here by Angela. Everyone can benefit, especially death conversations can be so awkward. Everyone's always put the Band-Aid on it. And you're in my thoughts and prayers. Good advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes,
thank you.
Yes, that replaying of the loss. Yeah, thank you, Sharon. Replaying the loss. And so now again with, certainly death, that is one of the paramount griefs that that people are all experiencing. And so this change from the norm, this pandemic, which has completely changed how people are working and all of that, sensitivity around people that are trying to juggle it. What guidance do you have around that for employers and leaders?
So, like I said before, grief is misunderstood. Why is it misunderstood? Because we have been given so much misinformation, Charvette, from an early age on how to deal with grief, right? So some of you have heard me say this before in the past. We are taught how to eat. We are taught how to replace, and we are taught how to get over it. So again, how to acquire things and not taught what to do when we lose these things, right? So, and then we start acting like grief is just this negative thing, this scary thing, right? Yeah. And I have some clients who also said to me, well, I don't want to feel sad. Well, I'm not asking you to feel sad. We just need to go through this process. So education is key, Charvette, and being empathetic to our associates and even knowing what to say, right? So understanding what grief is, what it's not, understanding what to say and what not to say. So here are some things that we're not going to say. And these things have been said by employers. Get over it.
Oh,
right? They're in a better place. I know how you feel. We don't know how individuals feel. Because again, every relationship is unique and individual. Every loss is unique and individual. What's valuable to you, Charvette, may not be valuable to me, and vice versa. So stop telling people, how they feel.
Yeah.
So what do we say? I can't imagine what that must be like. How are you coping? Because that's what you want to know from your employees. How are they coping? Yeah. Are they drinking? Is it substance abuse? Are they not sleeping? And how are we going to know if we're afraid to ask the questions? So I can't imagine how you must be feeling. How are you coping?
Wait a minute. Pump the brakes. Viewers, listeners, you can hear the expertise and the guidance. I'm stopping her. She's ready to go. Listen, Forever Healed, Lena Lassiter, connect with her, bring Forever Healed to your organization. You do corporate trainings. You can come into corporations and businesses and train them on how to do this. What's the best way for them to contact you for that?
So they can reach out to us at www.foreverheal.com. That's the best way to reach out to us. And then you can request a consultation with us, and we can actually tailor any training to the needs of your group. So we do a grief and wellness program. We talk about the different types of grief. We even talk about different cultures, how they grieve. We do role play. So we can tailor these trainings to best meet your needs.
All right, wonderful. And I do want to honor this comment from Roxanne. My story was, it was my cousin who was like a brother. So similar, Lena, to what you were saying about your uncle being like a brother. I ended up taking 2 years to recover. We had the judicial experience when the murderers were on the stand. I was in no condition to attend any court hearing. So thank you,
Thank
Roxanne,
you
for sharing, being
sharing
willing to share that.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And so small business owners, anything that, because corporations, there's a lot of layers and a lot of levels. And we have a lot of small business owners that listen and watch the show. Anything in particular, anything specific you might say to a smaller business?
Sure. And I think this can be applicable across the board. So I just want to give everyone just some quick tips, Charvette. So we know what not to say, right? So we learned that. I do want to say this. When we say things happen for a reason, I just want to say, I don't necessarily agree with that. We have to find meaning in every situation. And I like how Oprah Winfrey put it. She said, turn your wounds into wisdom.
Oh, that's good.
So how do we help our employees? So with benefits, right? So health benefits, mental health services, counseling services, EAP. Some companies have even added Charvette miscarriages to their bereavement time.
Oh, good.
As miscarriages as a loss. So I think we're getting better. Wellness and empathy training. So to your point, how do I approach this? Associate with compassion. So grief, wellness, and empathy training. So we train those classes. Flex time, y'all.
Yes.
So they just need to work from home, right? In a private space, so that they can have their private time. So in cases like mine, and the beautiful guest has shared her story, right? Going through judicial grief. Sometimes you just need that personal time, and also allowing flex time. Be available. Let them know that you are available, and talk and share, and share words of encouragement. And don't just say, y'all, I'm here if you need me. Be available. If the loss is to a death, remember them after the funeral. Remember them after the 2 weeks. Send cards, send meaningful gifts on holidays, right?
Yeah.
Reassign, Charvette, certain projects, right? Reassign certain projects until the griever is ready to focus on the work. Because remember, the griever is going to have loss of concentration. They're not going to be able to focus. So it may help you to just reassign certain projects until they're ready. And it usually takes months before that person is able to gain productivity.
Yes. And so this is where I think the small business owners, and again, listen with the ear of whether you have employees now, part-time contractors, I feel that small business owners, this is where we really have some leverage, because although you might say, well, I'm not at the place of offering health benefits, but you can offer flex time.
Right.
You can send cards. You can be more personable in these time periods, so I just want to make sure we're kind of thinking through that. Oh my goodness. How can they connect with you on social media and Forever Healed?
So we are Forever Healed on Facebook and Instagram, and we're 4 Ever Healed on Twitter. So you can follow us there.
All right, wonderful. And I have tagged in all of those places. So that's a great connection point. And if you're not sure about any of that and you're like, I missed it, just go to charvette.com and you'll see a great blog post with Lena's beautiful face and her bio, and her connection points are there at charvette.com. Listen, comedian Wendy Lee is saying, I'm grieving the loss of nosy because my neighbors are a new kind of nosy. Those neighbors. Yeah. So there, to her point, even though comical, a lot of different kind of losses. I mean, we saw over the pandemic, and while our time is winding up, the loss of people not being able to have big weddings, not being able to have graduations or those types of gatherings. We're coming around to a different space in that, but there's probably still some repercussion to that. Some people like the work from home. Some people don't like the work from home. And so there's grief on both sides. Some people are grieving. I have a friend who had to go back in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, work from home Monday and Friday. And it was like a grieving process of all of this time. And they have over an hour commute both ways. that they have not had to have. And now going back into it really was like, I got to get my mind right. I'm like grieving this flexibility that I have lost. And so
Wow.
lots of impacts, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're excited to have you as a speaker at the 6th annual
Yes, I'm
Pop-Up
excited.
Conference.
Yeah.
And you'll be tag teaming with Dr. Jackie Maxwell, who's hanging out with us here. And so we're excited that you'll be a part of that. And you are one of the contributing authors for my new book collaboration, Pursue, which will jump off with pre-orders tomorrow. So we'll have that available. And so certainly we're excited that you've been embedded in all of those things, but more importantly, that you bring such richness to these conversations and such openness. Please tell listeners and viewers about your weekly broadcast and live stream that you have so they can plug into that.
So we go live twice a month. So the second and fourth Monday of each month. And we just address different topics of grief. So every month we have a different theme. So this month we talked about grief and hoarding. So next month we'll have a different topic. We're going to even talk about hair loss because people want us to do us, that's a loss, right? So we're going to talk about hair loss. So join us on Facebook Live at Forever Heal. We're on LinkedIn Live and on YouTube Live at Forever Heal. So second and fourth Mondays of every month.
Wonderful. And you can go back and binge watch and Netflix and chill. If you're just finding out about Forever Heal, really you bring in so many great experts and such a great conversation. Again, maybe not the sexiest topic, but a very impactful topic. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yay. So awesome. All right. The last question I have the goal of the show is to motivate, excite, and influence. And we want to know what continues to motivate you.
So what continues to motivate me is just, I'm going to say this, the one constant thing that we bring to every experience is ourselves, right? So we want to be the best that we can be. And that means being healed and whole in every area of our lives. So Charvette, what motivates me is to pursue my healing mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and socially.
So well said. And final comment I will capture from a viewer, Sharon says, this has been an informative and sensitive subject that many corporations and organizations need to embrace. Thank you so much, ladies. Absolutely. I concur. Forward this to your managers, or just send them to foreverheal.com. I forgot .com.org. Okay. Forever Healed, send them there, even if it's just hey, I think this might be something beneficial for our HR team or the management team to, check into and to look into. So thank you, Ms. Lena Lassiter, for popping in.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for this platform.
Absolutely. My honor.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and the gentlemen that may be watching, thank you so much for popping in and just staying in here with us as we continue to bring you amazing guests and amazing shows. If you're brand spanking new to me and you're saying, I don't even know who you are, Charvette.com, which is where all of our shows, all of the past videos and upcoming guests are hanging out there. There's an about page. You can find out about me. But in a nutshell, I'm an online marketing strategist, and I'm really focused on the visibility and marketing of clients, small business owners. But guess what? Topics like this are a marketing tool, because if you're going to be hiring employees and contractors, and you have some of this built into your benefits, that is a marketing tool for you. So see how I tied that in. Thank you for everyone that hung out. Thank you. My mom said, great show. Thank you, Betty Jean Stanley Mitchell, for being here. And it's going to be a wrap. Share this broadcast with someone that, again, you think should benefit from it, and connect with Forever Healed. Until we meet again on the web. Bye.
Live from Richmond, Virginia, you've been listening to the Sharvette Mitchell Radio Show. Catch Sharvette Mitchell every Tuesday at 6 p.m., interviewing all the stars you want to hear from. So until next week, stay motivated, excited, and influenced. This is the Sharvette Mitchell Radio Show.